projects. Oh dear, this is not going well. Integration is the hero's journey. It is the path to absolute freedom, internally, externally, mind, body, heart. It's the journey into finding more and more of yourself, to experience that absolute fullness and freedom within you. And that is the journey we're going to be on today. We're going to dive into what does it mean to integrate everything within you, and to integrate the external with the internal, to really, as Jung would say, allow the tree that reaches to heaven have roots that reach down to hell, which we might view as the symbolism of integrated shadow work. Diving into the parts that maybe we're afraid of, that maybe we've suppressed, pushed down, and bringing them back up to the light. Or maybe we've taken on a belief, and because of that, we've limited our own light, our own power for so long. So sometimes we might go in on that hero's journey and we slay the dragon, that belief that we took on, and we give that back and we liberate ourselves from it. And then we find that treasure underneath, that treasure of ourselves that we just get to bring back home. And we get to just live in every single day. And the reason I believe this is so important is that when we do this, we don't get stuck fighting ourselves. We don't get stuck going, oh, I wanted to do this habit, but I keep breaking, I keep relapsing, right? I keep eating junk food when I want to eat healthy. Or I get really angry at my coworker. What would it be like if we integrate all that power back, all that passion back, and we get to deeply be full within ourselves instead of projecting something out there in some way? And the key parts of this, as we've said, integrate shadow, but also integrating the external and the internal. Sometimes we go one way, we have a preference, and that's pretty normal, you know. Sometimes we've been external for so long, everyone's told you to hustle, to grind, to push and achieve, and reach for your dreams and your goals, and there's lots of positivity in that, but it can be pressurizing. And you just go throw all that away, and you go deeply internal, and you listen to your heart and your authenticity and your vulnerability, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely wonderful. But we can mistake our previous experience with the external, with external being bad or being a problem. And as we mature, we might say, yes, I have this deep, vulnerable authenticity and this wonderful internal experience, and I'm loving it. And yet, the external, there's so much beauty there too. There's so much to learn there too. So much to grow there too. And I can just dance with both in polarity. And also, it's about mind, body, and heart integration, right? Instead of pushing thinking away, going, I need to stop thinking. Thinking is bad. We welcome it back, but with our heart and with our body. And so we get that alignment of thinking, feeling, and even impulse. That bodily impulse of where you just have that gut feeling that you know what you want. And I feel like that's a little bit different to maybe a heart feeling, right? There's a kind of a different quality there. When we include all of it and we go into real alignment, we'll find that our thinking doesn't create resistance and tension, but it might have done before. Often we think thinking is bad because of the resistance and tension we experienced before. But the reality is, thinking can be beautiful. Your thinking can really liberate us. And if we use thinking in the right way, in a soft way, in a gentle way, aligned with who we are, it certainly empowers us more than it keeps us trapped. It doesn't do that anymore. And that is integration, right? That is the hero's journey. That is what we're going into in the dragon's lair. And finding the treasure underneath, right? Allowing us to really come into contact with our distortions and our shadows, the roots that reach down to hell, and allow that treasure to pull us up to heaven, right? Heaven on earth. And one way we might get trapped or stuck is actually, I call it the internal trap. And we kind of touched upon this, where you ignore the external and you say, that's bad. But real integration isn't just about the internal, it's about including everything. And actually looking, where am I getting resistance and triggered externally? Instead of going, my job isn't aligned, right? I've heard this a lot. This isn't aligned, this isn't aligned. But why does resistance mean that we're not aligned? Maybe resistance is actually a curiosity to look there. And maybe you find that truly it just dissolves and it melts away because it was never meant to be yours. And that is beautiful, not a problem. But you might find there's even treasure within there. When I work with guys who run businesses, or a lot of guys who I work with, they run sales teams. And they've dealt with these problems where, just checking the board, they felt like, it's not aligned anymore after we went through some deep experiences. But then what happened is we just looked through it and explored it without judgment, without any preconceived notions, because that could be possible, that could be very true, but it may not be. Let's just get curious. And we were able to liberate a lot of our resistance to the point where they noticed a newfound joy and passion and purpose in what they were doing, working and managing sales teams or running their business. So when they found their renewed passion and purpose, and they realized that it was already there, that aliveness was already within them, started to empower them, because there wasn't something external that they had to avoid. Instead, they could integrate all of it. What's the part of themselves that's getting triggered here? Doesn't mean we don't listen to it. But what if that can come into a deeper light? And then very often the experience is quite different, because it almost dissolves away. It becomes very empty. Instead of being something that we resist and we really hate and we want to run away from, it's just like, okay, that's just not for me anymore. It's a much calmer experience. Whereas the opposite can happen, is they go, oh, actually, this is really what I want, right? But we don't know that until we unearth what's happening, until we explore, until we see what's actually creating that resistance to begin with. What's the story? What's the construct that's creating and making that? And so that's why it's so important that we don't ignore the external, but we use it, we get curious about it, and we integrate it until that boundary between external and internal actually dissolves. The other internal trap is bypassing shadow. We've spoken a lot about this, but if you're just doing waking up work, people might call it spiritual work, and you go in and you're doing deep meditation, or you're doing some plant medicine or yoga, and you may actually be experiencing deep states, and that's so wonderful. But you mustn't forget your shadow work. Because if you can imagine, the shadow work is changing the structure of the mind, right? It's shaping and cleaning up the distortions so we get a clear lens. And the spiritual work, if you want to call it that, the state work, the meditation work, that just expands your experience so much to get to a real depth and a vast understanding of who you really are. But if that's through a distorted lens, because there's still a lens, right? At this stage, there's still a lens. You're still experiencing it through something. And if the lens is distorted, that beautiful experience becomes distorted. And this is where you have a lot of catastrophes and scandals from spiritual leaders, because they've got a distorted lens, but they have a genuine deep experience. They really do, but a very distorted lens. And so that power actually creates a lot of harm for themselves and for others. And we want to really avoid that. So we don't want to bypass shadow, because it's going to create harm for us, it's going to create harm for others. And you know what? It's going to limit the beauty of the experience you can have. When you do all of this together, when you have those deep meditations or medicine work, if you're into that, or yoga, whatever it might be, and then you pair that with shadow work, you're going to unlock such a different experience of the state work, and you're going to get to a real freedom, but it's going to be much more integrated. Instead of you have to meditate yourself to put yourself in the state, it's going to start flowing 24/7. And that's what we want. That's real integration, is where we wake up with it. We don't have to put ourselves in it. We may still have practices, but the practices allow for us to simply embody it, right? So it becomes the normal, the new self. And finally, is creating identity, or a spiritual identity, which is unnecessary. We're not doing all of this to become grandiose, to become bigger than everyone else and become better than everyone else. That is completely unnecessary, right? Often a lot of people, they run away from ordinary. They want to be special, they want to be more, and that is completely understandable. Yet, in many ways, this work is about finding the heaven in the most ordinary human experience. From eating an apple to, even your work, your business, your relationships, just finding the beauty and experiencing the fullness within that. That's freedom. And still navigating the external world, actually getting to a place of freedom externally, so we can get to pursue our passions and do what we want. But we don't need to start making ourselves more grandiose. We've had an amazing state experience. We've dissolved external, internal. We feel just profound love, and we start saying that we're some spiritual master or guru or whatever. None of that is necessary, and it actually is just going to create more suffering for you and for others in the long term. And so we don't want none of that at all. In fact, the word spiritual, it can be beautiful, but it's often actually used by a lot of people to escape life, and that's not what we're doing here. That's often why I don't use this word in the work that I do. But this is the word I would use, is actually we're moving towards, with the integration of Mihiru's journey, we're moving towards absolute freedom, and we're moving towards wholeness, or radical wholeness. And the best way, the path forward with this, I view it as the integral path. This didn't come from me. There's a lot of amazing people in this space, like Ken Wilber, for example. But the integral path is all about including everything, right? And so we've got the inclusion of the external and internal, mind, body, heart. And when we're doing our developmental work, like we're growing, it's through waking up, cleaning up, and growing up. And each one is important, right? Waking up is the state work we spoke about, whether it's medicine work, or whether it's yoga, or some people do it through the breath, plant medicine. This is waking up work. We're going beyond the mind in some ways. And it's so beautiful. We get to see who we really are. We get to, the Buddhists would say, experience real emptiness, right? Which doesn't sound nice, but it's wonderful. And there's lots of different words we can describe it: bliss, love, all of this. But the waking up is about waking up to who you really are, and doing real state work, right? Embodying these real deep states of consciousness. And then we move into the cleaning up, and this is the shadow work. This is what we talk a lot about on this channel, right? Integrating the shadow. And this is where we work with the lens, we work with the mind, and we remove distortions. Where have we taken on an idea that we're not enough? Where are we projecting our power? Where are we in splits in our consciousness? And so cleaning up is healing all of that. So we just get this fantastical, clear lens that we can look through. And then often we get a lot of state experiences from doing cleaning up because we're no longer getting in the way, and we're just able to receive these deep, deep experiences. And growing up is developmental work, right? You can think of psychological development as something that we're always evolving in how we view the world, right? Through literal stages. My favorite model of development is created by Terry O'Fallon, her Stages model. You can check her out at Stages International. And it goes through 1.0 where we're a baby and we're just receiving, to 1.5 where we're a toddler and we're being active in the world, to 2.0 where we discover friendship and reciprocity, to 2.5 where we discover rules and we start creating structures. And then it evolves more and more and more as we get older to adults, and some people as adults grow even beyond to later states. It goes from 1.0 to 6.5 where people are having these transcendental meta-awareness states that are fully stabilized, or stages that are fully stabilized. And so that's growing up, it's developmental work. And so when we have waking up, the state work, cleaning up, the shadow work, growing up, the psychological developmental work, we're going to start to allow ourselves to integrate everything. We're going to start to allow ourselves to have what you might call an integral awakening, right? And that relates to this idea of absolute freedom or wholeness that we're using here, that we're moving towards as a horizon. But for me, the path that I use the most is cleaning up. And I was fortunate enough to be trained by someone called Kim Barter, who has a model of cleaning up or shadow work called ESR, Evolution of Shadow Resolution. And the model is aimed at using cleaning up to lead into waking up and growing up. So when we're doing the cleaning up, we do the shadow work so well that the light becomes so strong that it often leads into state experiences similar to what people who do hours and hours of meditation have done. And that leads to development and growing up because the shadow of its distortion is no longer getting in the way of organic psychological development. And so through the cleaning up, through this model of shadow work, we get to have all three: waking up, cleaning up, and growing up for the integral awakening, for the absolute freedom. Okay, and what does that look like? We go for a quick example. And I'm thinking of a client, and for him, he came with a problem where he was having that friction with his work, right? He was having that friction where he just couldn't be bothered. I just don't care anymore. And he's making great money from it. You know, he's really successful as a sales manager, but he just couldn't care. And we broke through that meaninglessness and that pointlessness that was emerging. And what emerged was this fantastical joy and gratitude and playfulness and aliveness. And he didn't feel like he needed to work more, but he started to enjoy the work that was there. And he started to just enjoy life in general. And this aliveness would just percolate through all of it, through his work, from when he woke up to when he went to bed, when he was resting or when he was being active. It didn't matter. And so we had the cleaning up, solving the distortion. But then that led to this state becoming so strong that he started having these beautiful experiences where he was witnessing the witness. And the idea of himself started to become less tangible, less real, not in a distorted way, but in a beautiful, curious way that can be similar to what Buddhists might see as noticing the emptiness, right, or the spaciousness of life. And so he was having these waking up experiences. And then as that unfolded over 6 months to a year of work, he started to have developmental experiences where he was moving from one stage to another because the distortions were out of the way and his natural capacity could just evolve into new ways of orientating and seeing the world, right? And so through the cleaning up, we got so much growth and change that he was able to just live life where the external and internal was integrated, and he was just able to move around with ease and wholeness and freedom. And just a quick note for the shadow work path, I want to talk about the 3 types of shadow because they're really important. We've got projection, we've got introjection, and we've got split ego. So projection might be, but I've got this person that's really frustrating me and they're causing me anger, and they're doing it and they're bad, but I'm actually projecting my power in some way. There's some complexities and nuance to projection. But one example of it can be that, like we spoke about at the start, I'm saying they're arrogant, they're bad. But then I actually go, oh, you know what? Why don't I re-own what I'm putting out there? And I realize there's an arrogant part of me sometimes. When I allow that part to liberate itself within me through love and compassion and community internally, and realize it just wants to be confident and secure, and I can integrate it. And now I'm in fullness. I'm no longer being disturbed by this person, because I'm no longer projecting my own stuff. Then we move on to introject. We might notice that, I was told that I'm not good enough. Right? That's an introject. Something that was taken from the outside world, a belief, a feeling. When walking around feeling like we're bad, we're not good enough, just feeling worthless. And then something magical happens and we explore it and we find that belief, we find when we took it on, we find the energy, the meanings, the stories, and we just give all of that back. And we notice the space left behind. We notice our natural worth, our security, a security that goes beyond the question of being enough. It doesn't even ask the question. It wouldn't even make sense of that. And we still feel whole in ourselves. And that light within us just gets so strong because we're no longer holding on to the old story. So we nurture that, we grow that until that just becomes an embodied experience of who we are. It becomes so strong, it becomes our default way of relating to the world. And finally, we have split ego. We might have a part that wants to go and be healthy, wants to eat healthy, nutritious foods. But then this other part keeps buying junk food. And we're getting confused and we're getting frustrated and we're getting annoyed. And so we talk to this part and we wonder, what's up? And we realize this part's positive intention is actually it just wants to feel comfort and safety. And so what do? We let it feel comfort and safety through the community internally. We help it get its needs really met. And because of that, it just drops that need for junk food because it doesn't need it anymore. It's already fulfilled. It feels safe and comfortable. From that experience, it becomes much easier to integrate and unify these parts because they're on the same page. And now they both feel like, yeah, we can feel safe and comfortable and we can eat beautiful, nutritious food and feel great within our body as well. And so each of these classes of shadow are part of the cleaning up in different ways. And each of these will lead to a different light that can lead to waking up. Whether it's re-owning the fullness and projection, whether it's discovering the freedom once the introject's gone, or the union from integrating the split egos. And we find that when we just nurture and celebrate these different lights, how they emerge in different ways, the fullness, the freedom, the union, And they're going to grow so strong as we nurture them, but we're probably going to have waking up states similar to what would happen if you did lots and lots of meditation, except they're coming from you instead of something that we're trying to reach outside of us. And what's going to happen is, as you remove these distortions, is your developmental work is going to become much faster, because you're not getting in your own way with distortions in the mind. And so all of this leads us to deep freedom, because we're not getting disturbed by the outside world, we're not feeling restricted internally, and we're not feeling in conflict internally. And so we're able to move through life with passion, with purpose, and with wholeness. And that's the whole point. And so I'm inviting you, if this resonates, stick around with the channel. There's a lot of great videos that are going to teach you how to do this. But if you want direct support, just reach out to me. There's a link in the description, and we can have a call, and we can see if it's right for you to take the next steps. I appreciate you, my friends. Have a beautiful day.